You've probably had plenty of people tell you like, oh, you shouldn't be so stressed. Stress is so unhealthy. And a lot of times our only response is, well, why don't you just get out of my face? Like nobody really tells you what the stress is doing. They just say it's unhealthy. So in this video, I'm going to break down things that can actually happen in your body from chronic stress. And if you don't mind spoiler alerts, it's not great.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So to understand chronic stress and what's really going on with dude over here, we need to understand the autonomic nervous system. And basically this is a system in the body that runs a lot of the show behind the curtains. Like we don't have to think about breathing, it just kind of happens. This autonomic nervous system runs a lot of those functions without us having to think about them happening. So it has two sides. There's the parasympathetic side, which is our rest and digest side. And then there's the sympathetic side, which is our fight and flight response. So this sympathetic state and the parasympathetic state, they're both appropriate, and the body will move back and forth between those states as it's needed. So what we need to understand when we're looking at stress is that when an individual is stressed, they move into this stress response. And this stress response is designed to help the body function at a higher level for short periods of time. Basically, the thing when we look at chronic stress is we need to understand that there is no organism in nature that is designed to thrive through an emergency type state indefinitely. No creature is supposed to do that. In nature, emergencies happen for about 2 to 4 minutes. Like if you're running from a lion, that's going to happen for about 2 to 4 minutes. Beyond that 2 to 4 minute period, the lion is either going to get tired and you're going to escape, or you're going to be lunch. But either way, it's over in 2 to 4 minutes. So we're really not designed through our autonomic nervous system to extend that period of stress. And the problem with our life today is that stress doesn't last for 2 to 4 minutes. We're not stressed because we're running from a lion. We're stressed because we can't pay our rent, or the report is due, or our boss is a real jerk. And that stress doesn't last for 2 to 4 minutes. It lasts for 2 to 4 years. So the problem with this autonomic nervous system is, for a wide variety of reasons, some people can get stuck leaning on one side more than the other. And if they're really stuck in that parasympathetic state or the sympathetic fight or flight state, either side can create a variety of health issues. So the first issue that can come into harm from this chronic stress issue is our restorative sleep. I mean, think about it. If somebody is stuck in a state where their body is basically running from a lion, how well are they really going to sleep? The body is not set up to run from a lion and sleep at the same time. So this really has the ability to affect sleep. This is not the only cause of insomnia or interruption with sleep, but this can be a big one if somebody's dealing with a lot of stress. And the other thing we want to think about is that restorative sleep is when we move into that anabolic rebuild and repair mode. That's where our body's supposed to rebuild itself so that we can continue to be a human. So I'm going to put a link in the description below to a study that shows us that with chronic stress, it appears to shrink the DNA in our cells to the point to where they can no longer replicate. And it appears to shorten these telomeres, which are like structures that cap or kind of protect the end of the chromosomes, and when those start to shrink down, then the cells just can't replicate the way that they should, and we can't rebuild while we're doing this restorative sleep. So that can be a big problem. When we're looking at these stress hormones that can elevate during these periods of stress, the stress hormones are there to help the body function at a higher level. They trigger reactions like, hey body, why don't you make some more glucose so we have an immediate fuel source to run away from this lion. So stress hormones can create more glucose in the body, and that also means stress hormones like cortisol can go up. And we see a lot of information out there about cortisol leading to weight gain, and if these stress hormones are also causing the body to create more glucose to use for this emergency source of fuel, then that glucose can also raise insulin and keep insulin levels high for a larger percentage of the day, which can signal the body to store fat and tell the body don't burn fat. So now I'm stressed out and my pants don't fit. And now so I'm stressed because I have to buy bigger pants. And one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, is stress ability to reduce our stomach acid production. So the rest and digest state, remember, is that parasympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system, which is the opposite of that fight or flight sympathetic side. So we need to be in that parasympathetic state for the body to be able to make hydrochloric acid so that we can acidify the food that we eat and break that food down so that we can get the nutrients out of that food. But if a person is really stressed out, then it reduces the body's ability to make that hydrochloric acid, and now that food has to break down by process of rotting and fermenting, and the rotting and fermenting can create more gases and pressure and toxins and discomfort and a lot of digestive symptoms just on its own. So this is one of the reasons that we hear a lot of people say, hey, why don't you relax when you eat your lunch? Try not to eat in a stressed state, because it really restricts your ability to get the nutrients out of the food that you're eating. That's why you're eating the food, to get the nutrients out of that food. The other problem is that it's the stomach acid that's like the main barrier to the whole digestive system. So when we're eating off the salad bar and some kid sneezed on it and we're bringing in all these microorganisms on the food that we're eating, now those microorganisms die in an acid bath when we produce enough stomach acid to break that food down. So if someone isn't making enough stomach acid, now those little varmints come in and they set up camp and they have a keg party and they raise their kids and they have a great time and they create a lot of havoc. Then the other side of our digestive process is our bile flow, and bile is this soapy substance that's made by the liver and it's stored in the gallbladder, and when acidic food leaves the stomach after it's been acidified, the gallbladder squirts this alkaline bile down to neutralize those acids. It helps us break down all of our dietary fats. It helps us access fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K. So bile is a very important part of the digestive function. But when we look at these stress hormones that can really be elevated, they have the ability to restrict bile flow by thickening up that bile so it becomes too thick and sticky to flow correctly, and now bile isn't coming down to help us digest our food and neutralize our acids and really get all the nutrients and fat-soluble vitamins out of those foods that we're eating. Another problem with this bile flow is that when the liver filters toxins out of the body, it puts a lot of those toxins into that bile, because when the bile comes down in the intestinal tract, it continues to carry those toxins through the intestinal tract so that they can go out the back door when we poop like a champion. So if bile is not flowing correctly because we're stressed out all day, then those toxins don't go out the back door. So now all these toxins start to accumulate and become another burden that the body has to deal with. Now you're stressed, but so is the body. We also appear to see decreased wound healing and just regeneration of our tissues in the body. And I'm going to put a link in the description below to a study where they took these dental students and they're like, hey, we're going to puncture a hole in the top of your mouth just before you go on vacation, and let's see how long it takes to really heal up. And then we're going to do it again just before you have your final exam week. And we're going to see how long it takes that to heal up. And I don't know what the motivation was to get these kids to, hey, let's poke holes in the top of your mouth. I feel like that kind of hurts. But they found that in the exam week, when these kids were really stressed, that it took those wounds 40% longer to heal. So the same wound, same person, it just took longer for them to heal when they were really stressed. So there's a big lesson for us to understand. And I don't know, don't go to college, that can't be the lesson. It's more about the stress that a person's dealing with and the effects that it can have on the body. We also see issues like itchy skin or even skin issues. You know, we hear a lot about people having hives during a time when they were under a lot of stress. And does this have to do with restricting bile flow and maybe the body can't detox, so now some of these toxins are trying to be pushed out through the pores in the skin, and that clogs up the skin and creates some type of hives or some type of reaction? It could be a lot of these stress hormones that have these chemicals that the body's making, and the body's trying to get rid of that if the body can't detox correctly. It can be from a variety of things, but we see things like the hives, but also other magnified issues that seem to come about with stress, like magnified eczema and psoriasis and other skin issues that seem to get worse when a person is put into a stress situation. We also see reduced immune function in chronic stress situations. And when we're seeing like these high cortisol levels, and these cortisols telling the body, you got to make more glucose to get this glucose into the muscles so we can run away from this lion that is not really there. Well, this increased production of glucose also restricts the body's ability to make infection-fighting white blood cells. So it's sort of like the body saying, hey, don't worry about this cold right now. We need to get away from this lion or we're going to be dead in just a few minutes. We'll prioritize this survival over an infection that's going to create problems long term. So that makes sense. You want the body to prioritize survival, but you need to understand that when you're chronically stressed, you're creating problems to your immune functions. And that's why you see so many people talking about an increase in risk of disease and infections, and with lower levels of white blood cells and resources being geared towards other things, more other priorities right now, plus a lack of stomach acid, allowing all the bad guys to come in on the food that you're eating, why wouldn't there be an increase of risk of disease and infection? That makes a lot of sense. When we're looking at chronic inflammation, I'll put a link in the description below for a study that showed a correlation between stressors and autoimmune disease. And it was like 80% of the people in this study kind of said that there was a significant emotional stress that took place before their disease kind of set in. And when we're looking at inflammation and this higher risk of heart disease and diabetes that a lot of studies kind of seem to correlate with high stress, you know, we're looking at things like the higher cortisol levels that can create inflammation. We're looking at this glucose that is being produced by the body to help the body deal with this stress that's going on that can really raise insulin levels, and high levels of insulin are very common for both inflammation and for heart disease and diabetes. When the insulin is really high all the time, then the cells become less receptive to that insulin and glucose doesn't get swept out of the bloodstream and it accumulates, and then where blood sugar goes high and a la peanut butter sandwiches, we're type 2 diabetic. So when we're looking at these things, you can see how obvious it could be that stress could be a factor in these problems. And I found some info about an increased risk of loss of bone and a loss of collagen formation. And when you look at both of these things, we can kind of bring it back up to this stomach acid problem, where if somebody doesn't have enough stomach acid, they can't break the food down and get all the nutrients out of their food. And when the body's not getting the nutrients it needs, it will steal it from you. It'll break down your tissues and even your bones and can create those bone loss situations where the body is basically just eating itself. And we'll put a link in the description below for our video about osteoporosis if you want to learn more about that. But when we're looking at this loss of collagen formation, you know, to make collagen, the body has to break down protein and turn that into amino acids, which are the building blocks of all of our connective tissues and collagen in our skin and stuff like that that helps us to look younger. So, you know, if people are asking you to borrow your AARP card and you're 32, you might want to chill out a little bit. Some stress might be making you look a little bit older than you are just by causing problems to this collagen formation. So we really want to be simmered down enough that our digestion can function enough to get the nutrients that our body needs, that it can rebuild itself and that it's not breaking itself down. Because when the body's getting all the nutrients that it needs to rebuild and repair, you might be able to deal with a little bit more stress. But when the body's not getting those nutrients because this digestive function is turned off, then that becomes an even bigger stress to the body. So now you're dealing with stress, but now your body is also dealing with stress. Because the stress that your body is dealing with can come from inside the body. Your life may not have a lot of stress in it, but if the body is dealing with these stresses, the body can raise all those stress hormones and everything that can create all of those problems as well. So to recap, simmer the f down. Like, we don't want these problems. We hear about stress creating, oh, it's unhealthy for us. But when you look at what's actually happening, this isn't unhealthy. Like, this is stuff that is happening from the stress, and this stuff is not good. I didn't list anything there that you would sign up for. These are problems that can be significant for some people. So what do? Let's look at some steps that we can take. And one thing that we want to do is, can we take a different viewpoint about what we're stressing about? A lot of times we're stressing about things that when you really look at it, it's not going to matter in 6, 8, 12 months. We're stressing about things that if we can just look at differently, it might not affect our body so much. But for most people, this is going to take a conscious effort to do that. You're going to have to really put effort into calming down a little bit, to take moments in your day just to relax for even 60 seconds. It can really change the way that your body is operating when you're not stuck in this for the whole entire day. Another thing you could do is you can reduce the stress in your body by correcting malfunctions. If this digestion isn't working correctly, maybe you're not making enough stomach acid, maybe bile is not flowing correctly, but if you can't get the nutrients out of your food so that the body has the resources it needs, then that's going to be a big stress in the body. If you have an infection in your body, maybe a lot of people have chronic infections and don't really know it, but they can be creating a lot of problems. Maybe that front door was open because you weren't making enough stomach acid, and now we got like a SIBO or a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth type infection. Whatever it is, if the body is stressed, a lot of times you can find ways to correct that problem so that reduces the stress that the body is dealing with. And finally, just don't stress about being stressed. You just learned all the trouble that stress can create. So don't be stressed about, oh man, I can't be stressed. Look what's going to happen when I'm stressed. It's going to create this stress. So don't add that on top of the plate of the issues that you're already dealing with. But the main thing for you to know is that you can reduce your stress. Does that mean that maybe I need a different job where my boss isn't such a jerk? That's not the most impossible thing to do. It can be a difficult thing to change where your income is coming from, but not impossible. But when you understand some of the problems that the stress can create, now it becomes worth the effort to make the changes that can reduce that stress. So I hope that was helpful and helps you find some answers and some ways to kind of help yourself simmer down a little bit. And if you are dealing with some of these digestive symptoms, then jump over right now and check out our video on how stress is really affecting your digestive system. We have a whole video just on these things here that can help you understand what else may be going on when stress is affecting your digestion. I can't wait to hear about your results.